Good evening, America, and welcome to your Thursday edition of Just the News, No Noise. I'm your host, John Solomon, reporting to you from Washington, D.C. Yeah, it's a busy day here in our nation's capital. Just a couple of hours ago, just blocks away from where I'm sitting right now, former President Donald J. Trump was arraigned on 4 federal charges related to his alleged attempts to challenge the 2020 election and for his role in the January 6th Capitol riot. The 45th president appeared before a federal judge and entered a not guilty plea. This case is not expected to be handled by U.S. District Judge Tanya Chutkan, an Obama appointee who has been known to hand down harsh sentences for January 6th defendants. More on that, as well as some breaking news in just moments with former House Judiciary Committee ranking member Doug Collins. But I want to toss it over first to my partner in crime here to give us the latest rundown on other headlines going on. Amanda Head, great to have you on. What's going on?
Good evening, John. I caught it. All right, President Biden and First Lady Jill continue their 10-day beach vacation in Delaware. And I don't think that I would be complaining if it wasn't for the fact that they have been on some sort of White House getaway for roughly 40% of his entire presidency. Now, regardless, the horror show goes on, proving the world doesn't revolve around Joe. Now, as we reported right here just 24 hours ago, the State Department has decided to reverse course and evacuate embassy staff in Niger amid a military coup that ousted President Mohamed Bazoum. The department further raised its travel advisory to a level 4, warning Americans not to travel to the country at this time. And speaking of travel advisories, one place no American belongs is the communist nation of North Korea. U.S. Army soldier Travis King was supposed to fly back to the U.S. from South Korea to face disciplinary proceedings after serving 2 months in detention for assault. Rather than returning home, he fled into North Korea. So now the communists have admitted to having him in their custody, but have refused to release him back to the United States. So we're obviously going to be monitoring that situation right here as it unfolds. And yesterday afternoon, it seemed as if former President Trump's running mate and Vice President Mike Pence went on a pro-Constitution and no evidence of voter fraud tour. But ironically enough for him, and just 2 days before January 6th, he was saying quite the opposite down in Georgia. Check this out, John.
You know, I know we all got our doubts about the last election. And I want to assure you, I share the concerns of millions of Americans about voting irregularities. And I promise you, come this Wednesday, we'll have our day in Congress. We'll hear the objections. We'll hear the evidence. But tomorrow is Georgia's day.
My mother taught me that if I don't have something nice to say, not to say anything at all. So I will just say, that's strange.
I would say, I hope Jack Smith did his research, because he built a lot of his indictment against President Trump on Mike Pence's testimony. But there, Mike Pence sounds more like Donald Trump 2020. So we'll have to watch how that goes. You know, it's really amazing to watch 2 separate scandals unfolding in Washington. You've got, obviously, the latest charges against former President Trump, and now the testimony this morning released of Devon Archer, the former business partner of Hunter Biden. His story is extraordinary. He calls Hunter Biden a lobbyist. That may mean that Hunter Biden should have registered as a foreign agent under the FARA Act. He also says that the family name bought protection for Burisma Holdings, something that the Biden family has long denied. It was a fascinating interview. Everybody in town here is buzzing about that, as well as the former president's court appearance today. We've got the perfect first guest to help us referee through all really 2 extraordinary moments in history. He's the former Georgia congressman and former ranking member of the House Judiciary Committee, and our good friend, and by the way, host of one of my favorite podcasts, the Doug Collins podcast. He is Doug Collins. Congressman, good to have you back on.
Oh, it's always good to be with you guys.
All right, so let's start with the arraignment today. Kind of a pro forma thing, nothing too splashy or unexpected about it. But the aura that, let's see, I think Democrats are up to like 70 some odd charges against the president. They might hit 100 if we get to Georgia. What's going on here? Is it a pilot?
Well, yeah. I mean, at this point, this one is such a different case, and I think you can go through the Alvin Bragg stuff. You can go through the documents case, which is very conflicted, very complicated. You got the Alvin Bragg case, which is just a train wreck of a first-year law student seemingly didn't know where he was at. And then you have this case, which is, again, you have Jack Smith coming out in this, and I think this is going to be the interesting part looking forward. Really, the arraignment today was simply a reason for those networks that have, just despise Trump and despise Republicans in general, just to have a field day. And saying, if you listen to some of what they were saying, it just is, unfettered. Oh, this is the end of the time. This is the last thing. And it's really not. It's just simply the process that we're going through here. The concerning part here is what Jack Smith's actually charging that is ambiguous, using, older laws, but also using terms in which the Supreme Court has been pointed out several times that fraud here was not a money fraud. Supreme Court has frowned on using fraud statutes for money or property issues. You've got issues of, saying that he knowingly did these things. This is going to be a different case. And it's just sort of sad to see this, because there is this idea of when does it stop, John, Amanda? If these are the kind of comments that can now be brought and charged, then I do have a long list of people that I would like to see. Are they sort of nervous about this, especially when it comes to high profile cases such as Hillary Clinton, Stacey Abrams, and others?
Yeah, great point.
Yeah, we ran a supercut of a long list of Democrats who said the exact same things when they thought that elections were stolen. So that's been interesting to see. But I wanted to ask you if this case specifically is a good opportunity for President Trump, in the fact that, as he has said, he thinks that this is going to be an opportunity to air out some of the questions pertaining to the 2020 election case. Now, I happen to know the legal maneuvering that the other side is going to try to pull to prevent that from ever seeing the light of day. But is that kind of a silver lining to this?
Well, it could be, if allowed. That's going to be the interesting part. Again, this trial judge has a lot of flexibility and a lot of discretion on how they're going to run this courtroom. She's going to run this court. And if she allows the open-ended testimony to go at, say, contradicting state of mind, contradicting intent, those kind of things, where it could get really interesting to see. But again, it's also going to be a matter of where, and I'll try to juxtapose this to the documents case for a second. Again, both very tenuous, but the documents case has issues that might need to be decided before a trial. It'll be interesting to see if this trial judge says, no, let's just do the case, then we'll decide if these were, appealable issues after the fact. So it's going to be a lot there. I know that's what they're trying to do, and I think it'll be interesting if it was allowed to happen. The question is going to be, will it be allowed to happen? But also, I want to make up one thing that John sort of come up out of that first segment, that first question. Yeah. Remember, they're tying this to January 6th, but they really did not make any charges related to the actual activities on the Capitol of that day when, the violence took place there. That's an interesting, it may come later. It may, also the fact that they're trying to streamline this is to only charge Trump, not the co-conspirators. A lot going on here. But I think some of this goes away if they did not have actually the January 6th violence to tie this to. And I think that's what they're going to try and do, especially the left-wing media.
So let me ask you about that. The president's already been tried once for these crimes, alleged crimes, when he was impeached. You've got a second question of free speech. A lot of what's charged in there are actually political speech moments. And then the third thing is Jack Smith's going to have to say, I can tell you what was in Donald Trump's mind better than Donald Trump can tell you. And there's this whole file of Bernie Kerik stuff that we broke. Other people are catching up to it today, the CBS News, other major news organizations. Bernie Kerik had a file on January 5th saying these are all the things we still have to figure out if they're true or not, which means they went into January 6th thinking some of these allegations were still unresolved. Those are three big hurdles for any prosecutor, even in Washington, D.C.
Oh, yes. But again, this is not a prosecutor who's scared to stretch the law. And we see also he's not really afraid to get overturned unanimously at the Supreme Court either, because he stretched the law. But, again, this is an interesting part. Again, if you're going to try and get into, Donald Trump's mindset, I just simply point to an interview that he did last month on a network, one of the Fox networks, and he said, he was questioned about this, and he talked about this, and he went back to the fact of this election was stolen. There were irregularities that were there. I mean, you could just still see in his mind that he still truly is in the fact of believing that the election was stolen, and this goes back to the whole crux of this case that you're looking at. It is interesting, though, that was brought up in the introduction of the news segment, the dependency upon Mike Pence here. And that's going to be interesting to see in that indictment and the conversations between Pence and the extemporaneous notes that is now seeing. So it's going to be, who's going to be called, who's not been called, who's not being charged. I mean, these will be the parlor games for the next little bit. But John and Amanda, this goes to show also one thing for these other networks, they use you as show notes to start with anyway.
I want to move over to the Biden brand and everything that we have learned since then, including the fact that apparently the Bidens saved Burisma. Maybe when Joe Biden is talking about saving jobs, that's what he's talking about. But I want to ask you, in regards to the evidence that comes out, I feel like if Chairman Comer came out with 50 SARS reports that showed explicit money going from Burisma, going from Volodymyr Zelensky, Zlochevsky to the Bidens, directly to Hunter Biden, directly to Joe Biden, that Democrats would still say, no, doesn't mean anything, forget it, that's no proof, nothing. But what does it take for the American people? Because I think that's what matters the most. What does it take for the American people to be convinced?
Well, a couple of problems here. Number one, so as much as we talk about new media and the stuff that you put out and others, there's a vast majority of Americans who still get to the old habit of going to the evening news or their local evening news, and they go to the local big three. And there was a report just done recently that said 60% had no real knowledge of some of these accusations against Joe Biden because they simply never come up on those mediums. This one is going to be a little different, though, because I get very upset about, because these accusations were the very thing that they called us foolish, crazy, conspiracist, whatever you wanted to call us back in 2019 when I was having to sit through Jerry Nadler's sham impeachment. And we were bringing up the fact that, Hunter Biden was in the Ukraine, that what the president was asking about on this call, again, is this not deja vu all over again? What he was actually asking about on this call is actually the stuff being discussed now. And to understand this is just very frustrating, because you ask, what would it take? And I thought, you paint a picture, draw a map. Well, we have actual video evidence of Joe Biden actually doing what the Devin Archer says, and that is, hey, they needed this prosecutor got rid of. I told them they wasn't getting the money, and I'll be darned, they did. They got rid of the prosecutor. I can't help you if you can't figure that one out.
Yeah, I agree. He used a little more colorful language than I'll be darned, but I'll tell you, it was definitely that. Doug, it's always a great honor to have you on. You do such a great job making sense of these big issues. We're going to get you on real soon. Folks, be sure to check out his podcast, one of the best in the country. I listen to it all the time. All right, we're going to take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we're going to shift our focus to the southern border. Yep, a lot going on there, too, with citizen criminal convictions, non-citizen criminals being convicted and arrested. We'll have that right after these messages.